You meet a boy who hates everyone, his father, his friends, his circumstances. But the rage wasn't strength. It was a confession he didn't know he was making. Every accusation he threw at the world was actually an admission. And this is what happens when someone finally hears what they've been saying. His name was Amir, 17 years old. The kind of broken that doesn't look broken on the surface. He wore his anger like confidence, his blame like intelligence. Everyone else was incompetent. His teachers were lazy. His parents were unfair. His friends were selfish. The world had conspired to ruin him specifically. He knew this with the certainty that only someone completely powerless can know something. Because certainty about external enemies is the last weapon of someone who has lost all internal control. It was 4 a.m. when his mother found him on the roof. Not planning anything specific, just sitting there, thinking about how unfair everything was, how everyone had betrayed him. She didn't climb up. She sat below and asked one question that would have meant nothing to anyone else. Amir, if everyone around you is wrong, what's the one thing they all have in common? He didn't answer, but he heard it. The question stayed. The next morning, something strange happened. He noticed it at school. During first period, his teacher made a mistake in the math problem on the board. Amir did what he always did. He announced it loudly, made sure everyone saw how incompetent she was, and then, for the first time in years, he actually watched the reaction. Not the teacher's shame, his own. The way it felt to sit in that certainty. The way it felt to need others to be wrong so he could be right. He walked out of class thinking about his mother's question. If everyone around you is wrong, what's the one thing they all have in common? You. But he wasn't ready to accept that. None of us are, the first time we face it. So he doubled down instead. Started collecting evidence of everyone's failures. It made him feel less alone in his own. He would go home and write lists. His father's broken promises, his friends' betrayals, his teacher's incompetence. The lists were thick with purpose. They were proof. They were the only thing that made sense. But something had shifted. He noticed how tired the collecting made him, how much energy it took to stay angry at that volume, how the energy never actually went anywhere. It just pooled inside him like something toxic and still. 3 weeks later, Amir broke his phone screen, completely destroyed it. Instead of blaming the pavement or the moment he wasn't looking, he just stared at it. And then he thought about something his father had said years ago, the last time they actually spoke about something real. His father had mentioned a man named Hassan, an old man who worked in their neighborhood, someone Amir had never heard about. His father said Hassan had been someone who blamed everyone for everything until the day he couldn't anymore. Amir didn't know why he decided to find him. Maybe curiosity, maybe exhaustion, but he did. Hassan was sitting on a bench outside a small shop, maybe 60, maybe older. Amir sat next to him without introduction and said, "I blame everyone, my family, my friends, this whole country. Everything wrong in my life is their fault." Hassan didn't look at him. He just nodded slowly, like he had heard this speech before, from himself, from everyone. He said something that seemed like it shouldn't work, but it did. "Tell me about the person who hurt you the most." Amir talked for an hour. His father mostly. How his father had left when Amir was 9. How that single action had given him permission to blame everyone forever after that. It was the original crime that justified all future accusations. Hassan listened. Actually listened. Not to respond, just to hear. When Amir finished, Hassan said something that Amir will remember for the rest of his life. "Your father's leaving was real. It was painful. That part is true. But you've been confusing two different things. The pain is real. The power of that pain to ruin your life permanently, you gave that to him. He was gone, but you kept him everywhere. In every interaction, every accusation, every failure you blamed someone else for. He was still the only reason anything was wrong. You kept him alive in your mouth every time you blamed. It wasn't kind, it wasn't harsh, it was honest in a way Amir had never experienced. Because Hassan wasn't trying to make him feel better, he was trying to make him see. That night, something cracked. Not healed, cracked. These are different things. A crack is where the light starts to get in, and light shows you things you've been hiding from. Amir realized something that made him feel sick and small, and finally real. Every time he blamed someone else, he was admitting he had no control over his own life. Every accusation was proof of his powerlessness. He had been walking around advertising his weakness while thinking he was displaying his strength. The weakest people in the world are the ones who blame everyone else, because they're admitting they can't change anything, not others, not circumstances, especially not themselves. And Amir had built his entire identity around being weak and calling it wisdom. The next week, he went back to Hassan. How do I stop? Hassan didn't give him a method or a framework. He told him a story. There was a farmer in his village who had a son. The boy was weak, couldn't lift much, couldn't work like the other boys. The farmer could have blamed the boy, could have blamed his own bloodline, his wife, his luck. Instead, every day, the farmer had the boy move a pile of stones from one side of the field to the other. Just one pile a day. Small stones, light work, but consistent. After a year, the boy was strong, but more important, he was no longer thinking about who to blame. He was thinking about the next stone. Hassan said, "Blame is a luxury. You only have time for it when you're not building." Amir didn't understand yet, but he heard it. He started small. When he made a mistake in school, he didn't blame the teacher's unclear instructions. He recognized his own confusion. When a friend disappointed him, he didn't blame their selfishness. He examined what he had actually expected and why. When his mother asked him to do something and he didn't want to, he didn't blame her for being controlling. He admitted he didn't want to do it. Just that. The admission alone was strange and powerful, because every time he took responsibility for something small, something unexpected happened. He felt less like a victim, less trapped, more like a person with agency. The space between stimulus and response where his power actually lived, which Epictetus had spoken about but which no one understood until they lived it. Months passed. Amir was different, not happy. That would be too easy. But present, conscious. His father still hadn't called. That pain didn't disappear. But it wasn't the explanation for everything anymore. It was just pain. His teachers still made mistakes. His friends were still imperfect. The world was still unfair in real ways. But none of that was the point anymore. The point was what he did with what he had. The point was the stones. One afternoon, completely out of nowhere, his father called. Not for a good reason, not because he had suddenly become a better person. He was in trouble and needed money. Amir's first instinct was to blame him, to use this as proof. He's still failing. He's still the reason everything is wrong. But Amir paused, and in that pause, he chose something else. He chose to say no, but not because his father deserved it. He chose to say no because saying yes wouldn't help either of them. He chose boundaries instead of punishment, responsibility instead of blame. His father sounded surprised. Hurt maybe, but that wasn't Amir's responsibility to manage anymore. And Amir realized something in that moment. This was the real strength. Not the ability to point at everyone else's failures. The ability to handle your own life regardless of what everyone else did or didn't do. What Amir knows now that he's trying to tell you is this. Everyone is broken somewhere. Everyone has been hurt. Everyone has reasons to blame. Your family, your circumstances, the people who let you down. They're all real reasons. The unfairness is real. But here's what nobody tells you. Blame is the warm room where broken people stay broken. It feels like intelligence. It feels like you're seeing something others aren't. but you're actually hiding from the only person who can fix anything: yourself. When you finally stop blaming everyone, something terrifying happens at first. You have to face the fact that you have power, that what happens next is actually in your control, that you're not a character in someone else's story. You're the author of your own. And that power is terrifying because it means you can't hide anymore. But it's also the only real freedom that exists. The boy who hated everyone learned to live differently. Not because everyone became better, not because the world became fair, but because he moved one stone at a time, and the stones became his strength. If you are still blaming, if you're still pointing at everyone else, you're not angry at them. You're angry at your own powerlessness. And the only way out is to take responsibility for the one thing you actually control. Not the past, not other people. This moment, your choice, your next stone.